Prepping America. Ready for anything.
Ready for anything. Thomas and your wife, Tina, great to have you both on as always, right? You're my co-host, Thomas. Tina, great to have you on. We're going to be talking about many different things that are happening in this world all at the same time. We generally do not talk about politics in the show, but since Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has dropped out officially today from the race, he's got a very interesting 5-minute video, which we'll play in a couple of minutes on what? What's he talking about? He's going to talk about we're on a crisis. We're on the brink of civil war in the United States. And why is that important? For people that want to survive, that want to prep, that want to live off grid, that's a warning sign. So you really should consider, especially if you're in a city, to think about what you can do. Thomas, weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, we did it for a while, right? We have our stuff together out there for this very reason. I was never worried that actually the Chinese will land on our shores. I'm more worried about that people going a little bit bananas inside the United States at a certain time and point. And I think we're approaching this.
Yes, Tina, you and Thomas left California in 2020. I left New York City, and I went under contract at my house at the end of 2020, but I left in 2021. Talk about why you and Thomas and your children decided to move.
My family, we left California, specifically the Bay Area, to get out of one, we didn't know what was going to happen with the world with COVID. I have a son who has very bad asthma that is virally loaded. So that means anytime he gets a cold or the flu or what have you, he gets really sick. So my husband and I, we purchased land off grid in northern Arizona. And there I homeschooled them and we began to build the foundation for our compound.
Very good. Thomas, nice journey out of California, was it?
It was a challenge. It was a challenge. It was an adventure. It was suffering. It was hard work, mentally challenging, everything.
Beautiful. Very good. Let's get to the first video. The first video is going to be a little different for the people. Why is that? Because this is in Chengdu, China, and my friend Lana out of New York City, good Chinese single mom, good friend of mine, she confirmed this actually happened. Now, what is exactly this? This is a report from Russian Times, and we're not reporting new age kind of stuff here, but I'll say this solar event is kind of different. It's happened yesterday. Different. 7 suns. Now we know China was making an artificial sun maybe 5-10 years ago. Is it that? Maybe. Is it Project Bluebeam? Maybe. Is it a natural occurrence that we've never seen in human history? I do not know any of the answers. All I know is times are changing. People are becoming more awake and aware that the governments around the world are not going to protect us, and that maybe God, if you believe in God, is actually going to make a showing. Thomas and Tina, weigh in, please.
Yeah, I think my wife is more the expert on that topic.
Go ahead, Tina.
I absolutely believe that we are living in the last days. If you read your Bible every day, like I do, the signs are everywhere. Chaos, family member against family member, the idolatry, how we put our government officials, presidents on a pedestal, homosexuality, pedophilia, making all of these things normal when they're not. Drag queens reading to our children in the library, where before this was done by teachers and parents. I came to faith at 7 years old by my grandmother, a Southern Baptist. And if she were alive today, she would not recognize the country that she grew up in.
Thomas, what are your feelings? What do you hear from Germany related to are these end times in Europe, do you think?
It's the same situation, James. I think I just sent you something this morning, which is really shocking in the German news. Yesterday, someone was executed in a train station, cold-blooded, from back, boom, 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 shot multiple times. killed right on the site. The crime rate is up by 750%, James. You
And we
know,
had execution style murder in Philadelphia yesterday as well. That actually made it on Twitter. I will not share that for the audience. It's very gruesome. They shot this victim multiple times. It was black on black crime. It was, no matter what it was very horrible to see. And it's in broad daylight, literally. You could be gunned down in broad daylight. It's horrible.
I mean, in Germany, people are really not used to that, right?
Yeah.
That people start getting gunned down. That happens here in the Wild West where we are living, right? But
Well, Wild
right,
West is a little more tame now than compared to the
right,
cities in Europe and the United States. That's all I'm going to say.
right. I mean, you don't have any stuff like this here, but in Europe, it's in Germany particularly, it's getting out of control. It's really concerning. My wife and me just had this conversation this morning. If we fly to Germany, I say, forget it. You cannot go out there at night anymore. It's
Right.
done. It's dangerous. It's seriously dangerous. In a city like Nuremberg, which is close to my house in Schwabach in Germany, it's dangerous. You can't go there anymore. In the past, I could walk there at night, have beers, have fun. It's done. It's over.
Yeah, I haven't gone to New York City this year, which for me is highly unusual. I've moved out 3 years and I've gone 4 times each of the past 2 years. And this year I'm a little hesitant. My friends, a couple of former police detectives tell me it's very rough up there. And I'm like, do I really need that kind of exercise in my age? Absolutely not. Right? Do I have to watch? I mean, you're just not enjoying life when you're looking over your shoulder all the time.
Right.
That's all I'm going to say.
Right.
It's horrible. It's
It is
horrible.
horrible. We're going to play a 5-minute video. Let me set this up for the audience. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr.,
Mhm.
an American hero, no matter what side of politics you are, right? We all have flaws. He overcame some of his drug issues in 1983, was saved actually by a former Marine, got involved in river keepers to save the pollution, the industrial pollution in Hudson River, New York. You got to give your hat off to him. He formed the World Mercury Project, which eventually came to Children's Health Defense. So Bobby Kennedy has been, in that respect, for humanity, been a hero, no matter what you think of his politics. Well, he's dropping. He just made an announcement. He's dropping out of the race today. I'm going to say this: he's going to join Trump's rally tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I assume he's going to join the Trump campaign. So for a Democrat, especially a very liberal Democrat in Bobby Kennedy Jr., to join President Trump, that is really going to shake things up in the Democrat world. All I'm going to say, I'm not talking about politics, but his message here in a 5-minute video is about we're on the brink of a civil war. Now, you got to respect, he injured his vocal cords 15 years ago. So he's going to sound raspy, this and that. Just, we'll be quiet. We'll play the entire video. Thomas, Tina, and I will talk about it and listen to what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has to say. Oh, and by the way, I've written articles and got paid for it, disclosing as a journalist, World Mercury Project, Children's Health Defense, and he wrote the foreword of my book, Mastering Up there in 2016. I just want to get that out of the way.
America, we are lucky today. We're lucky in a way perhaps difficult for us all to see. We're lucky because we're not in a civil war right now. There are no makeshift field hospitals in Virginia filled with wounded boys who haven't even shaved yet. Toward the end of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln visited a 200-acre field hospital in Virginia, personally attending to thousands of wounded men who had seen hard fighting. Some of the patients were missing limbs, some were blind, some were scrawny with disease, and many of them were dying. And some were so young that Lincoln openly shook with sobs. One of these soldiers recalled that President Lincoln, quote, had a kind word for all of us. His voice, said an onlooker, was subdued. His eyes were mild but all-observing. The close grasp of his hand attested the sympathetic great-heartedness of this great man. Another soldier said that the president walked down the long aisle between the rows of cots and spoke to and shook hands with every man in the ward. It was that handshake that I have always considered the greatest honor that ever came to me. A doctor in the hospital said that Lincoln's visit was a green spot in the soldier's anguished days. In one tent, Lincoln encountered a Confederate, a member of the opposing army, and here's what the Confederate wrote about that encounter. quote, he halted beside my bed and he held out his hand. Looking at him in the face as he stood with extended hand, Mr. President, I said, do you know to whom you offer your hand? I do not, he replied. Well, I said, you offer it to a Confederate colonel who has fought you as hard as he could for 4 years. Well, says he, I hope a Confederate colonel will not refuse me his hand. No, sir, I replied, I will not. And I clasped his hand in both of mine. America, we are lucky today. We're lucky in a way perhaps difficult for us all to see. We're lucky because we're not in a civil war right now. We are, as I have said, in what may be called a cold civil war. And we need to stop our fighting. We need to stop the relentless bickering, the judging, the hating, and extend to each other a new handshake of reconciliation. If that assassin's bullet on July 13th in Pennsylvania had found its mark, the cold civil war that we're now immersed in could have gone hot. Not only President Trump, but maybe even our entire republic had a close brush with death. And a brush with death reminds us of what is precious. It reminds us of the preciousness of our loved ones and of life itself. And in this case, it recalls us to what is precious about our country. What is this experiment that we call America? For all of its dark chapters, the genocide of the Native Americans, Jim Crow, slavery, imperialism abroad, and so on, America has also pursued its originating ideal of liberty and justice for all. That ideal is written into our nation's constitution and into our DNA. Our ancestors did not come to this country merely to survive. They came to America, the very archetype of a great nation. The best republics will be virtuous, John Adams said. And elsewhere, Adams wrote that public virtue is the only foundation of republics. There must be a positive passion for public good established in the minds of the people, or there can be no Republican government nor any real liberty, he wrote. A generation later, Ralph Waldo Emerson, our great philosopher, said the power of love as the basis of a state has never been tried. There is no way to enforce such virtues. Our founding documents, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, can inspire civic virtue, but in the end, it's really up to us to choose it. Again and again, we must realign ourselves with the founding spirit of our nation. Now, in particular, is such a time. Are we willing to extend a hand across the divide? Are we ready to renew ourselves as one nation indivisible? I believe that we are, and I believe that process, the process of reunion of our nation, has already begun. That's what my presidential campaign is about. The goals of ending wars, reversing chronic disease epidemics, restoring the middle class, getting corruption out of Washington, and so forth are important, but they're not the deepest core of why I'm here. Because a nation divided cannot accomplish any of these things. I'm here to bring unity to our country with the best of my ability as I serve all of these other goals. And that's what I'm going to continue to do with your help.
Powerful. Loved it. Go ahead, Tina, weigh in, please.
Immediately, I just wonder why he did not strategically join Donald Trump on his campaign. Those are the questions.
Yeah, I think he's joining tomorrow, but go on.
Those are the questions that I have personally. I love the message. What shoots home for me is bringing the country together and finally getting the message across that we must work together to fight the people who are after the United States. I don't know if this is an internal regime that is siding with Axis countries. I don't know where this is coming from, but it is not to any of our benefit, black, white, yellow, or green, to continue to stay divided. What is it going to take? A nuclear bomb, one of our children being hurt, bombed, killed, for us to come together as American citizens. I adored Robert Kennedy's uncle, John F. Kennedy, and my husband can attest to this, that my bucket list was what I wanted to do is go to Dealey Plaza since I was 16 years old, and I watched Oliver Stone's movie, JFK.
Yep.
I miss that America. I miss the what is it? The foundation of freedom and freedom to speak and freedom of enterprise, freedom for a man and woman to get married, for us to be able to say what we want without fear of being canceled. I talk to my children about this every single day. So if Robert F. Kennedy joining Trump can do this, I think it's a powerful statement. If we do not unite, as Abraham Lincoln did say, we will falter. We will not make it another 100 years the way we stand. And I do not know what it's going to take for every American to finally wake up. We need each other collectively, every single one of us. Do we have to have troops from other Axis countries on our shores to finally come together? Do we have to stand destitute, hungry, broken down, burying the bodies of our children to realize what our founding fathers have said? My grandfather, my father, my mother's cousin were veterans. My mother's first cousin died in Vietnam War at 19, blood shed for our flag. How are we going to honor these people? And on top of it, I have young boys. We're worried about them being taken for a draft. What is it going to take?
Understand. I'm with your passion. I love your message, amplifying what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just said. Thomas, please weigh in.
Yeah, James, I came from Germany, right? Once, a long
Yep.
time, right? So when I came to the US, I was here already as a child, but when I came, was to the Silicon Valley, and the first time I went to a baseball stadium, right? Baseball flag, American flag. It was like, what a great country. Everybody's united. Everybody stands behind the flag. During my time in the US, I saw this disappearing. More and more and more and more. I told my wife,
yes,
it's going in a direction like Germany. When you fly the flag in front of your door, you all of a sudden a right winger, or you some crazy because you're flying the flag of your country. So I was always impressed by the collective of the United States. People are coming together, 9/11, whatever, and it's falling apart. And that's a sad thing to see. That America is the greatest country in the world. Why? Because it always was united. And,
Yes, I agree.
and that's a problem now. That's a real problem. And it has to become united again. But I think ASAP. And we're going down the wrong road here.
Definitely. It's going to get crazier before it might get better. We don't know how this is going to turn out. That's for sure. Let's go to the next video. And now we're going to get into prepping, into a site development checklist. We're going to have the report on Monday for the audience. I don't have it quite ready today, but it's be done over the weekend. It will be ready on the website, preppingamerica.us. But here's a checklist video.
Do you dream of living off the grid? Imagine a life where you're self-sufficient, connected to nature, and free from the hustle and bustle of urban life. But be aware, before you embark on this journey, you need a plan. Introducing the ultimate site acquisition checklist for off-grid living. From assessing the land to installing renewable energy systems, from ensuring water supply to sustainable landscaping, this checklist covers it all. Whether you're starting from scratch or refining your existing plans, this comprehensive guide will help you turn your off-grid dreams into reality. Download the site acquisition checklist off-grid now and take the first step toward your sustainable future.
Very good, Thomas. It's going to be interesting for the audience to see what's on that checklist come Monday.
Yeah, I mean, we had like I said in the last show, we had a clear plan what we were doing out there. I mean, my wife, she saw how this all came together and how quickly things came together, but it's really without a plan, without a checklist, before you even get started, it's difficult to do. Very, very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely correct. It is difficult to do if you don't do it right. That is for sure. We're going to play one more quick video on food storage, and then we're going to get into the PowerPoint deck and talk about some news, because news affects us all. whether you're off grid now or not. You need to still know what's going on in the world. That is for sure. Here we go. This is 1 minute food storage, a very interesting system to keep your food cold underground.
This is an underground fridge that runs without electricity. It's called a ground fridge, and it's a naturally cooled cellar that's a modern take on the traditional root cellar. It can hold 12 refrigerators worth of fruits, vegetables, wine and much more, with its 3,000 litres of storage capacity. The ground fridge is simply dug into the ground and covered with the soil that's been dug up, giving it natural insulating power that means the temperature inside remains steady and cool throughout the entire year. Installing it doesn't require any permits like a normal cellar would, and ventilation is done by a fan with a timer that gains fresh cool air during the night. It's big enough for 2 people to comfortably stand in, and you can walk in and out of it upright. It's perfect for those who are looking to live a bit more off-grid. What do you think of the ground fridge? Would you or someone you know like one? Tap like if you would and let me know your thoughts on this in the comments.
So you even needed to attach to your power grid, Thomas, the solar panels, all on its own, natural, taking the earth cooling. And, you know, I was in Lake Como in Italy, 2007, and it was a hot end of July day. You walk inside one of these old restaurants, probably built a couple hundred years ago, and everything inside of that restaurant was clay. Doors were open. It was all clay, and you had just a couple ceiling fans like this, and everything was cool. No air conditioning whatsoever. Didn't need it. So it's kind of the old-fashioned way of building. That's how they, you know, dealt with the heat back in the day. But this is the same principle, is it not?
Yeah, they use the earth temperature because it's steady. Like for example, in our area, 18 inches frost depths, right? Everything below, it's a very steady temperature down there. And there's actually a lot of guys, they building root cellars off grid, digging all kinds of stuff. But that system I just saw in the video is really good because it's very easy to install. Doesn't require much knowledge about building anything down there, right? I mean, you can also, and somebody wrote in one of the comments, can you bury shipping containers? Yes, you can, but you need to create a structure for those. They're not meant to be squeezed by dirt from every side. So it's a little bit more effort than that thing. That root cellar is fantastic. It's easy, super easy to do.
It's a prefabricated pod at the end of the day. It's got got stairs in it. You bring it in, you get an excavator, or you do the old-fashioned way, dig 10 feet deep by hand if you want, knock yourself out, and then install it, right? I'd rather use the backhoe, though.
Be my guest, come up there, dig a 10-foot hole.
Yeah, you need a little OSHA shoring to drop it in.
I have one guy out there, he used to actually earth thermal tubing to cool his greenhouse. So we have a guy out there who actually used this kind of method from the earth temperature for cooling the house. And
in New York City, they actually do well bores deep down into the earth, and they're able to take the, you know, like I guess a couple hundred meters down, they're able to bring up all of the cold air and recycle it, circulate it. And so it keeps at least the cellars cold in New York City. It's pretty interesting technology you're doing.
if you look like, if you go to Greece, you mentioned Italy, right?
Yeah.
But in Greece too, all the buildings they have, even in southern France, they are built with this chimney effect. So it sucks all the hot air out. They are always cold. They have no air conditioner down there. And southern France is as hot as here in Phoenix. There's not much difference to it. So go in the building, they're nice and cool. And those clay bricks or whatever, they don't heat up during the day. And at night, they like a battery. They store the cold air from the night and it stays in the house.
Beautiful. It's great. All right, let me play now the PowerPoint deck. We'll get into some news. Here we go. We're going to talk a little bit about money because the systems feel like they're starting to collapse. And I think, Tina, were you in the finance world?
I was, yes, right before the real estate crisis.
Yeah, so the financial collapse survival. Here we go, episode 2. People need to understand what's going on. This is from the Geneva Bible of 1540. Even the Geneva Bible 1599, it was updated by by the King James Version. The King James Version eliminated 4 words from the Geneva Bible, what were they? Because we read Ephesians 6:12, it's for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and against powers, the princes of darkness. What they removed is against the worldly governors. Worldly means systems of systems. Governors means gatekeepers. Doesn't mean just your governor or you're a leader. You talk about dealing with gatekeepers. We're dealing with a Babylon system we're trying to get out of. And so what they've done in the Bible is they removed critically hundreds of years ago with the King James, they completely erased these 4 words. Imagine, Tina, if we grew up and were warned about worldly governors, these bad systems. I think we'd all would have lived a different life, would we not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I grew up at a time when we trusted our government, and the thought that we would ever be in a situation where we could not trust our own government was never a thought in my mind. So, the removal of these very important 3 words, I'm sure it would have made a huge difference on a lot of evangelicals. So
Yeah, I agree. I would have looked differently, right? And the governments have always been pointing at some other enemy. And like the last 10 years is Russia, Russia, Russia. I'm just tired of the whole thing.
yeah,
Our governments, so we're not only fighting worldly governors, we're fighting the big tech system, right? The big media system, the big pharma system, which is warned about in Revelation 18:3, I believe, is pharmakia, right? Which translates to sorcery.
mhm.
I find, gee, if we're so our big pharma is witchcraft. I got a concern, don't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And like you stated, more and more people, because of the internet, we are waking up and we are learning. And me as a Christian woman, I know um, without a shadow of a doubt that everything that this world needs is given to us by God. All our medications,
Yep.
natural herbal remedies, the water, using our food as medicine. And pharma is huge. A perfect example is with my own son. Patrick has asthma. And one night I just remembered an old wives' tale, quote unquote. And I don't know how I got it, but my grandmother raised me and she told me a lot of stuff when she was raising me, a lot of things. And I just thought about Vicks menthol. And I said, let me rub it, eucalyptus and menthol, on the bottom of my son's feet and then put socks on. And I rubbed him down with some lavender essential oils, and I put the eucalyptus and the menthol on his feet, and he stopped coughing the entire night. And then I went on to Google and I looked this up, and all you could find was there's no scientific evidence that menthol and eucalyptus cream or oils rubbed on the chest or the feet would have any help or significance by deterring a very bad cough. And it worked for him every time. But yet and still, they would not state that a simple jar of 3.5 ounces of eucalyptus and menthol oil would ease a cough, but pharma's going to push on you all these other drugs full of chemicals that are horrible for our blood, horrible for our endocrine systems, horrible for our heart, increases our blood pressure. Whereas back in the day, now $5 jar of Vicks can help you and ease your cough, but they're going to push the $35 or $50 medications on you that essentially will lead you, not only you're sick, but then again, make you sicker. So then you have to stay in this system and go to the doctor, and it goes on and on and on. And you're like a hamster in a rat wheel, and we're not getting sick better. We are in these suburbs, which is another reason why my husband and I decided and prayed over this to move off grid, is because I know the system is made to get us fatter, sicker, dumber, and weaker. It is not made to keep us strong. It's not to increase our wisdom. It's not does anything to increase our independence. My grandmother used to always tell me since I can remember, the world is getting weaker and wiser. We have technology literally at our fingertips, and our children are insane. We need two incomes to survive in this society. There's no one at home to take care of our children. They are trying to destroy and emasculate men who are the foundation of a family. I was raised by my grandmother and my mother, so, bringing home the bacon and frying up in the frying pan. That was like our motto. I still, in quote unquote, is a feminist. I was raised, take care of yourself, have your own money. I went to college, but I know fundamentally that my life, my children's life, our society is better as a whole because I have a protector and I have someone who protects, guides, and leads our family. And I was raised by a single African-American woman,
Yep.
put herself through nursing school. So if anyone, this feminist, like Me Too movement that is destroying our society, it has to stop. And it comes fundamentally from our Bible. Everything that is happening today is prophetic.
Correct. Thomas, let's go back to Frankfurt Central Station, right? The execution is a bloody crime. 70 acts of violence at train stations and trains every day. That's just trains. It's not even on the streets. It's not in buses. It's not people robbing homes. It's not the rapes that are happening in Germany, Sweden, and Holland, and other places. Totally crazy. Go ahead.
That's just trains. We're not talking about the bus. We're not talking about public places. Over 25,000 cases in 1 year. Okay, we're talking about a country which is the size of California, right?
Yes.
80 people living there in Germany. That's all. 25,000 cases. So the chance, how many people of 80 million people drive with the train every year? So now calculate the chances that you get robbed, stabbed, mugged, whatever on the train is pretty high. It's very significant. And this stuff never occurred before in Germany. Never. And I told you my friend works for the State Security Department, which is kind of FBI, CIA deal. It's kind of mix out of it. And he told me the crime rates increased by 700%. They've never seen anything like it, but they have orders in a lot of things to look the other way.
Correct.
So they're not pursuing it really as hard as they could.
No, the Americans really are out to lunch a lot of things. They say, well, why would a full-scale World War III kind of kinetic war affect us in America? Well, let's start off with the millions. We don't know what the exact number is. I don't think it's 10 million. It's a lot less, but it's still millions have crossed the border in 3.5 years. You have an all-star cast of invaders. Red Dawn. Why is Red Dawn? Well, China's got 30 to 70,000 PLA officers, soldiers inside the United States. They could start taking down trains. They can start taking down trucks. They can shut down the logistics. Thomas, that's your background. Go ahead.
Yeah, logistics we see already is failing, right?
Oh, yeah. It's failing without it. Correct.
Massively. Whether it's the rising cost of shipping, container shipping, ocean freight, whether it's trucking companies getting out of business left and right. We talked about it in the last show. People maybe don't pay attention to it, or maybe they don't want to pay attention to it. I don't know. It's just Google it. Google it. What's going on
You need audience. You need to be aware of wars, geopolitics. You need to be aware of food shortages. You need to be aware of water contamination. There are things you need to educate yourself with. If you don't trust Google, and I don't, you use Yandex, Yandex.com. Yes, originally created by Russians, but owned by a Dutch company, so it avoids U.S. sanctions. So it's no longer a Russian search engine. It is now a Dutch search engine. Yandex.com, you'll actually find stuff that is completely censored or downranked or erased or deleted from Google. Highly recommend you use that. You will find more of the truth there than anywhere else. All right, let's go to this. So going back to Europe, European vaccination card will be piloted in 5 countries. We're talking about Latvia, Greece, Belgium, Germany, Thomas, and Portugal this September. What they're trying to do is force you onto your mobile phone right here. You're then you cannot get into a restaurant. You won't be able to get car insurance. You won't be able to get a bank account without your vaccination status. This is the mark of the beast in Book of Revelation. Tina, we got a problem with this, don't we?
Yes, we do. Absolutely. Again, I don't want to, pound the Bible and just how I was raised. I literally every night, and I'll pray and I'll think to myself and I'll ask God, for insight, because I want to look at everything with an open mind, and I want to be accepting of everybody's views, and to think that the technology that we have today and the rapid speed of how everything has occurred in the last 10 years with, like you said, sanctioning what we say, having our data on our phone, the actual having these cell phones with so much information on them, where you have your financials to pay for, a burger or your insurance bills. Now you can have your driver's license on it. And it's just, if it weren't for my faith, I would never sleep. Let's put it this way.
Understood.
And the only thing that gives me cause to sleep at night is that it is written, and that these things must happen so that the return of Christ will come. So I do pray for all of us, our world and our country. But it's just, there are some things I can only consume so much, because I'm concerned for our world and our country collectively. And so
Agreed.
yes, I'm very mindful of what I read and what I research, because we're living in I just can't believe it. And just 10 years.
Well, most of us never expected to have the end times happen in our lifetime. That to me, that's my reality. Reality, we all read Revelation, all heard about Revelation of 4 horsemen. Even if people don't read the Bible, they've heard of all these things and like, it's not going to happen. My lifetime is going to happen 1,000 years, 100 years from now. No, it's happening now.
Right.
And so now it's time to wake up. And so therefore, food preparation, shelter away from the will. So Jesus warned and others warned in the Old Testament to head to the wilderness, right? Head out of the city and go to the wilderness. What are you talking about? Living literally off grid, living away from the population centers, because they're going to collapse.
Right.
So this is not new information. The technology, right, that we have today to allow off grid living is a lot better than it was a couple of thousand years ago. But the warning has always been there. Thomas.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, we have the technology today to make off-grid living very comfortable. I think just that a lot of people are so conditioned now that they think that like, oh, the grid is safe, that's safe. The dependency got so far. Most of the people don't even know where the fruit comes from anymore. Where the fruit's from? Where the steak comes what from the plastic tray in the supermarket.
Mhm.
I think it has changed so much. When I grew up on that farm in Bavaria, we had everything at home. We made everything. We lived technically off grid already then. It was very normal.
Yeah, on the farm. My father did the same thing in Norway, 100 years ago, whatever, and his six brothers and sisters, same thing. So I'm with you. And my mother grew up in Bergen, Western Norway. She used to walk. The cars were like, even in the 1930s, the cars like whatever. She used to walk into town,
Right.
buy a loaf of bread, put it like a football under a rugby ball under her arm, and carry it back. There was no plastic back in the day. They would do all the cutting of the bread when they got home. There was no automatic slicing. It was not processed. It was fresh dough. It wasn't, and the wheat wasn't contaminated, and the grains weren't contaminated from glyphosate and these other industrialized pesticides and chemicals, which are like forever chemicals and actually affect our bodies, affect our DNA into our children. I mean, we're living in very different times.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yep. So let's go to a video called Short video called The Hero Story. You might recognize Thomas, maybe.
Age
Oh.
45, working hard in California, totally stressed. Age 48, left it all behind during the pandemic. Decision point, bought land in Arizona. Action, built an off-grid home from scratch. Turning point, realized true freedom. Age 51, living comfortably off-grid with my family. Now independent, prepared, and happier than ever.
Great picture of you two.
Thank you.
I love it. Talk to us about that journey of yours, both of you. Go ahead.
You want to start?
Oh my goodness. So I am probably the poster girl for the suburbs. And right when we saw the land, and I've always dreamt about having a farmhouse with a wraparound porch where I could just sit and have like a billion conversations with my husband. But more seriously, right before the shutdown, I prayed and I said, Lord, I need discernment. What do you want me to do? And, I heard him say, I want you to go here to protect your family, help your husband, and to build this off-grid ranch. And everything in my body was just saying, no, I don't want to do this. I want my Starbucks coffee. I want to be able to go into Walgreens and stay in there for hours and, shop, look for lip gloss, and meet my girlfriends on the weekend for wine and wine tasting, all of these things. But for whatever reason, I got pushed to northern Arizona. And literally, there were days where I would, and I've never cursed the Lord, but I'd ask him in tears, why have you brought me here? What is the point? You called me here. I'm being obedient. Now I'm here with my children. And through literally rain, sleet, snow, homeschooling my two boys and our 100-pound German Shepherd, while my husband worked hours tirelessly for 10, 12 hours to get us, a home, and me yelling and screaming and crying, and my kids don't have a room and they need this and we need that. One thing I will tell everybody is definitely not for the faint of heart. You need to go with the mindset of strength. You need to pray. You need every resource, spiritual, physical, and mental, that you can get your hands on, because at the end of the day, the love for my husband and my family, it kept me going. But there were times of joy, and I'm proud of myself. I'm extremely proud of him. My children know how to build a home from this ground up. They know how to set up infrastructure, septic, water, electricity, and nothing that no one will ever take that from them. And I can leave this planet knowing fundamentally that they can take care of themselves. It wasn't easy. Like I said, I'm the suburbs all the way, but I knew spiritually, intrinsically, that it's what we needed to do so that we can sleep at night, knowing that when the time comes, that we have this safe haven and that we're prepared. So I learned a lot of things, and I would recommend everyone. I just know this is how we were meant to live. That's all I can say. This is God's plan, and everything else is smoke and mirrors. It's set up for greed, money, but this was his divine plan for us. And yeah, that's it.
Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I ran many companies, so I invested in many companies, right? As you know, and out there, it was very peaceful building all this. You're in peace with yourself. It's hard work, and it's mentally challenging. You're challenging the elements sometimes, particularly up there in the mountains, from blizzards to monsoons, where you sink in the ground all the way to your ankles in mud, or bury a backhoe very quickly and cannot get it out anymore. So it is definitely a tough thing to do, particularly out in this area. But at the end of the road, it's very rewarding. Once everything was done and you sit in your house, and all of a sudden you have power and not a single noise around you. No generator, no nothing. Power like in the suburbs. It's fantastic.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, we're going to play a little video. This is about the show you're watching now, what we're bringing to you here now and over the next few months, because the world. It's not just living off grid, literally. You're still connected, partially connected to the world, even if you live out in the middle of the desert. Right, Thomas?
We have high-speed internet, right? I mean, that alone, you're in the middle of nowhere and you're watching Netflix.
Right.
It's crazy, right? I mean, yes, you're still connected to society. The only difference is you're so far away from your next neighbor, not like in the suburbs where you can literally, when the guy yells next door, say, hey, I need a kitchen paper towel, and you just hand it out the window, right? So that's a little bit different out there.
Tina?
What I would like to say about living off grid, granted it was hard, strong mindset, but our family, the connections and the closeness that we built during this time was amazing. I'm sure I created bonds and memories with my children and my husband that you can't, there's no money in the world that anyone could pay me for it and could take this time away. I would recommend everyone do it, if nothing else, but to mentally quiet your mind down. You have no idea how much noise and information that we are inundated with on a daily basis. So much so when I come to the city, I didn't realize but how overwhelmed and overstimulated I become. Because all you have is your family, nature, and you're not just, traffic and noise. And so when you come like to Phoenix, I felt like an alien from another planet because I had been displaced from all that, and you have the farmer down the road or that's coming 30 miles out of the way. They're not honking at you, flipping you off and move out my way. They're just, everybody's on their own way. They're going to the store and they're calm. It's just a different, for lack of a word, vibe.
Slower.
Vibe is the right word. It is a different vibe.
Slower.
Let's go back to the 1970s. 1970s, as a teenager, we went to camp. Other friends of mine went to dude ranches, right, to learn things. You had the real Boy Scouts back in the day, learn how to tie knots and all that boring stuff. But in reality, Thomas, your two sons with Tina have probably at their very informative age, right, the end of the childhood, now going into teen years, the last 4 years, as young teenagers, they are getting the best education in the world, are they not?
They got it out there, yeah.
Absolutely.
They really did. Because they know how hard it is to build a house. They know what it takes to build infrastructure from scratch. They understand all of it. They were, how old were they? 12 and 13 when we started? I think so.
10
Right. And you taught them how to drive tractors and things and whatever else, right?
Tractors, backhoes, forklifts, everything. They move everything. Whatever has wheels or tracks or sticks, they move that.
Tina, is that great? Is that really cool or what for your children?
Oh Absolutely. It's just when I knew I was having all boys and I wasn't going to get a daughter, so it was very important to me that my boys knew how to use their hands and they knew how to use a hammer and all of these things. And, and that's another reason why I did it. It's like the hands-on learning, the training that they will get, they will never get this in school. You have to seize the moment. And so I did. And in this regard, I'm so proud of them, and I'm proud of my husband for teaching them all the things that I didn't learn in this regard. But yeah, it's amazing education, and that's what's missing. Uh, we need to get back to the basics. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, the basics is right. I completely agree with you. Thomas, we're going to provide that checklist for everybody on Monday. And they're going to be at least be able to use it as a place to start. Now we're going to invite next week. We're going to invite the audience if they have problems, if they're currently prepping or off grid, if they got construction issues, they can actually we'll be able to provide an email address next week for them to send in, and we will see what we can do. We're going to provide advice only. We're not going to tell you how to do anything. You act whatever advice we provide, you're going to have to go out there and research your own, make sure there might be, another way to do things, right? So that's going to be a disclaimer, in that regard. And there was, you saw some interesting comments in the Rumble section on our first episode. And one of them was like, well, James has been talking about, the military white hats coming in and saving the world. Well, you have to understand a couple of things. They're coming in to save society, the security of society. When society cannot protect itself, that is when you're going to see the covert military going over it, and you'll see them in the cities to prevent a full destruction of the United States and of Western Europe cities. The same thing. This will be a worldwide, not just the United States. And you got to realize when cities are being destroyed and it's over, you got to think about this. And my parents gave me a very interesting thing. Both my mother, one of 5, and my father, one of 7, were the youngest in their families. My mother came from a very wealthy shipping family. My father was a farmer. They both came here after World War II because both of their parents recognized, you know what? You don't want to be in your young years in Europe, rebuilding Europe for the next 10 years, because all of Europe was completely destroyed. You don't need to be part of that. You need to start your lives. So they both came into New York separately. So my parents didn't meet in Norway, 2 Norwegian parents. They met at a Norwegian wedding in Brooklyn in 46. They got married in 47. And then I've become one of 5. But that's so what I'm telling you is when the stuff hits the fan and the fan's turned on high, it's going to get really ugly in these cities. And no one knows how destroyed these cities will be. But you don't want to be there 6 months from now rebuilding the cities, especially if you got children. You really want to think about this. So it's not about the White Hats are coming to save us. Don't sit there in the sun with popcorn in your mouth. You got to, and we're going to a new world without government oversight. Literally, all the regulation, the bar association, all that's going away. That is a Babylon worldly governor system. That system will be dismantled and destroyed. Not going to happen overnight, but it will be replaced. So we're bringing back manufacturing in the United States, which means you're going to have to use your hands again. You have to learn how to use a hammer, a saw. We're going to rebuild the United States. This is what's coming. So do you really want to be in a city 2 years from now? I don't think so, especially if you're raising young children. So off-grid is not going to stop the minute the military goes in. Absolutely disagree. We're going to build our own communities of off-grid, our own food, away from cities, so we never depend and never be enslaved by a financial system again. That's what's coming. Thomas, go ahead for a minute. We're going to close out the show. First you and then Tina. Go ahead.
So yeah, again, I think I mentioned it a couple of times. Off-grid, the term off-grid, a lot of people think it's a bunch of guys with tents or so, right? Off-grid means just I'm out of the matrix. Let's use the matrix. Let's use literally the matrix. I'm out of it. I'm not dependent anymore water, electricity, food, And I'm also not dependent on the financial system. Once I built all this stuff and I did it the right way, I'm out of this matrix. Like my wife said, in a city, you are in a matrix. Are we living right now in a large city? Yes, we do. We have a house down in the Phoenix area because the kids got to go to school. They're now in a certain age where they want to have friends. But we have this out there. We have the options. So if it gets too hot down here, literally temperature-wise and otherwise, we are out. We have that place which we built, and we are out of the matrix. So I can go in and out of the matrix like Keanu Reeves in Matrix. Right? I can turn it on and off as I want to do it. A lot of people, unfortunately, are forced to stay in the matrix, and where that leads, you see it in the Matrix in the movie, right? So I mean, the end is inevitable, and
Right. And you really, so you really got to be flexible, people. And this is, you know, the military is going to save us. It's going to prevent the collapse of society. That's what the military is going to do, but it's going to be up to us to rebuild. I'm just telling you. And there's no America to go to like World War II. Europeans come to America. There's nothing like that. We're going to be right here in the United States. We're going to be rebuilding. You want to rebuild cities that actually did damage to you and your families? I don't think so. I think you might want to start thinking about communities away from cities. Just my opinion. Tina closed out the show. Great to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a huge responsibility. Yes, like you said, you build communities, get together with like-minded U.S. citizens. There's so many things that you can do in a compound. Educating our children, teaching your kids about the Bible and scripture. When we went in before the shutdown, my main thing was to gather my family, get a Bible because I knew that would see us through. Pray, stay together, and just know that you're going to get through this. And it's about self-reliance. It's about family, and collectively, it is about coming together, bringing our country together again. And, you know, if this is what comes out of it, something horrible, that we are united with our brothers and sisters of every creed, color, then, you know, that's the blessing that I hope for, you know, in Christ. So thank you, James.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Tom. Thomas, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
next week.
Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Prepping America. Ready for anything.